Dragons. We're here together to try out this online learning. So today we're going to do a lesson on energy in a food chain. We're going to review a little bit as well. And then throughout the week, I've created for you a week at a glance in Canvas, just with an idea of an activity for each day this week. Only one of those things will you have to complete and submit to me. And then next week, we'll add maybe one more thing to do. So we'll gradually ease into this online learning and we'll all get used to it. So first of all, if you're a B-Day kiddo, you didn't get the opportunity to watch Disney Nature Bears movie with us. So if you're interested in that, it's on Amazon Prime for $2.99. Ask your parents first. And it's also on Disney Plus. So if you already have a subscription to Disney Plus, that's a great opportunity for you to be able to watch the Disney Nature Bears movie. It is absolutely not required, but it's a fun one, and you'll fall in love with Scout and Amber and their little adventures as bear cubs. I want you to watch, if you watch for how those bears interact with their environment. Watch for what they eat, because that tells you about where they get their energy. Pay attention to where they fit on the food chain inside their ecosystem. And look for other relationships of interdependency in the movie, how living things depend on other living things and non-living things in their environment for survival. Like I said, totally optional, but a fun little activity for you to do while you're home. So let's talk about energy in a food chain. We're going to review first. A food chain is the flow of energy in an ecosystem. So here you can see the energy starts with the sun. Picture a big sun right here on the screen, and the sun gives energy to the leaf. The leaf uses some of that energy to grow big and strong and to make its own food. And then it gives energy to the caterpillar. The caterpillar gives energy to the chameleon. The chameleon gives energy to the snake. And then the snake gives energy to this mongoose right here. So you can see that these arrows mean give energy to. And that's how we see the flow of energy in an ecosystem. We also have studied food webs together. So food webs are a group of interconnected food chains. So the reason why we have food webs is because not every animal only eats one thing. So we can see here, this rhinoceros eats the tree, so does the giraffe. They eat the leaves from the tree as well. You can also see that we have this little monkey here of some kind. I'm not sure what kind of monkey he is. But he eats snakes and he also eats grasshoppers. So he gets energy from two different types of organisms. So that's why we see this interconnection of food chains, because animals and organisms eat more than one thing. Interdependency is the living things depend on each other. They depend on other living things and other non-living things to survive. So here we see a mouse that lives in a cactus, and it depends on this cactus for shelter and protection from its predators. Those predators don't really like these spiny cactuses. And then we see a warthog down here, just like Pumbaa from Lion King. And this warthog is depending on a non-living thing because it's drinking water. And we know that water is non-living. So here is an example of a warthog living, depending on water, non-living for survival. And here is the mouse living, depending on the cactus, which is also living for survival. So these are a couple of examples of interdependency in an ecosystem. So let's talk about that food chain. So the sun gives energy to the producers. Inside the sun, there's all these nuclear reactions going on, lots of energy there. The flower, the sunflower here, for example, soaks up that energy and uses some of that energy, okay? So the sunflower gets the most energy off the food chain because it gets it straight from the sun. It uses some of that energy to create its own food and to grow big and strong. So here's a picture of that sunflower growing big and strong. It uses some of the energy from the sun to make their own food. Then something comes along and eats that producer. So we call these primary consumers. So this primary consumer is a rabbit. So this rabbit is going to nibble on the leaves of these sunflowers, and we call them primary consumers or herbivores because they eat plants only. So another example of a primary consumer would be like a deer because it eats grass. Any animal that would only eat producers, so plants only. So make a porcupine. A porcupine only eats fruits and vegetables, and so that would definitely be an example of an herbivore also. Okay, so this primary consumer gets energy from the sunflower because it eats its leaves. So this primary consumer is getting a little bit less energy than the sunflower did because the sunflower used some of that energy that it got from the sun, remember? So as we move up in the food chain, those animals receive less and less energy from the animal before. So rabbits are going to use some of that energy that they got from eating those leaves to the plants and from eating the producers. They're going to have to look for food. They're going to have to burrow and find a place to live, build a shelter, so to speak, by burrowing in the ground. They're going to have to escape from predators and run. They're going to have to search for food. They're going to have to eat food. So while they're doing all of those things and living their cute little rabbit life, they're going to be using some of that energy that they got from the producers. So then, because they use some of that energy, when a secondary consumer, like this fox here, might come along, or coyote might come along and eat this primary consumer, it gets even less energy from that primary consumer. Because remember, that rabbit burrowed in the ground, it ran from its enemies, and it used some of that energy. These secondary consumers are sometimes omnivores, and sometimes carnivores. I mixed those two words together, didn't I? Omnivores would be animals that eat other organisms and other plants and other animals. Carnivores would be animals that eat only meat. So we can see that they're getting that coyote is getting less energy than the rabbit did. From the rabbit. Now, the coyote is going to also use some of that energy. So it's going to also hunt for food. It's going to eat its food. It's going to escape its predators. And so it will also use some of that energy. When something larger comes along, we call this a tertiary consumer because it's at the very top of the food chain. So this is a mountain lion that might be a hunter of the coyote. So the mountain lion is a carnivore, which tertiary consumers are normally carnivores because they're at the very top of the food chain. Now, at the very top of the food chain, they're going to get even less energy because remember, the plant initially got the most energy from the sun. Then it used some energy to grow. Then the rabbit got a little bit of energy from the plant. It used some of that energy. Then the coyote got some energy from eating the rabbit. And now the mountain lion is at the top of the food chain getting even less energy because that coyote used some of its energy as well. So the mountain lion's at the very top of that food chain. We call it a tertiary consumer. So here's a picture of an entire food chain set up so that you can see the amount of energy that it gets in the food chain. So at the very bottom of the food chain, we see all of these producers, and they're getting energy from the sun. And so they have the most energy, which is why it's kind of this triangle shape. See how they have the biggest section of this triangle? Because they have the most energy. Their energy comes straight from the sun. They use some of that energy to grow big and strong and to make their own food. And then they give energy to these primary consumers, which are usually herbivores. A squirrel, a bird, bugs of some kinds that eat plants. And then these primary consumers give energy to secondary consumers. These secondary consumers consume even less energy because these animals had less energy to be consumed, so to say. So these secondary consumers, snakes, frogs, they eat these primary consumers. And then lastly, we have tertiary consumers at the top that receive the least amount of energy because throughout this whole entire food chain, this energy is being used. And so the animals at the top get the least amount of energy. So the tertiary consumer is at the very top of the food chain. Down here, we see these decomposers, worms, mushrooms, ew, yuck. And these just fit all over the food chain, right? Because they eat everything that's dead, plus the animal waste from the things too. Okay, so your assignment for today, actually for tomorrow. So watching this video was enough for today for science, okay? So tomorrow you can sign back onto Canvas and you can complete the Canvas quiz called Food Chain and Ecosystem Show Off. It's inside the quizzes section of the Science Canvas course. Okay. We have other fun things planned for you this week. So on Wednesday, we plan for you to watch a little video from the Cincinnati Zoo. They've been doing these fun home safaris. And so we want you to find out about Fiona, their cute little hippo. Actually, it's a big hippo. And then that's Wednesday. So Thursday, we want you to check on your marigold. How's it growing? You planted those marigolds at open house. And so hopefully you've been watering it and making sure it's getting a little sunshine. I know mine's grown maybe an inch and a half high. We'll see. And then Friday, if you don't have your marigold, by the way, that is totally okay. Those of you that do have them, keep checking on them. On Friday, we asked you to just take a walk. Hopefully the sunshine will be out and you can take a walk with your family and experience science around you in the neighborhood, okay? Okay, we hope you have a great week and we'll see you soon.